Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Manda. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Debbie Dwi Elsa as a moderator. Here we are again in the second session of keynote speakers. This session will be presented by Mr. Paul Heru Wibowo from Universitas Multimedia Nusantara, Indonesia, and Mr. Levente Sipos from Esterhazy Karoli Catholic University, Hungary. Each speaker has 30 minutes, and for Q&A session, we have 30 minutes also. So please ask the questions via the chat column. And the first keynote speakers is Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul, are you ready?
Ready.
Yeah. Mr. Paul Heru Wibowo, a lecturer at Film Studies Program, Faculty of Art and Design, Universitas Multimedia Nusantara. He was graduated from Bachelor Degree of Literature, Department of Indonesian Literature, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and then Magister Degree of Urban Arts and Cultural Industry Program, Institut Kesenian Jakarta. His publications such as In the Name of Revenge, Face of Indonesian Action Film Narrative in 2019, Si Jampang Jago Betawi, Study of Characters in Comic Genres in 2015. The Future of Humanity, Superheroes in Pop Culture, 2012. Yes, that's all. Mr. Paul, you may start your presentation right now. You have 30 minutes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Debbie. Good afternoon, distinguished guests. First, I would like to thank the committee for allowing me to share my thoughts and reflection about the relationship between comic and sequential art, the pandemic, and its aftermath. At this conference, I will only read a short paper I have prepared. The article's title is Comics and Sequential Art Between Pandemics and the Narrative of Human Fragility. In this paper, I try to reflect on a statement by Samuel Beckett, an Irish novelist and dramatist, that every word is like an unnecessary stain on silence and nothingness. Yes, we must admit that over the past 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused sufferings in our lives. The pandemic has killed our loved ones. The pandemic brings silence and nothingness into our lives. But to this day, do we still need to keep silent? I don't know if the sentences in this paper can provide a proper reflection that comic and sequential art has helped to break the silence. Distinguished guests, please let me start our conversation this afternoon by asking 2 questions. What is the position of art amid human suffering? Can art turn despair into hope? Turn tears into dance? I believe that both questions may answer quickly today. In a matter of seconds, we can serve to find answers through a word search engine. We can obtain answers from multiple perspectives. But of course, I wish we could discuss both questions more deeply. The two questions I ask are from various traces recorded in the history of art that has always been so close to human suffering. Works of art are usually made in poverty, under repressive regimes, in prisons, on the outskirts, or in a coffee shop after the night shifts. Throughout history, works of art have existed to comfort, heal, and be a voice for people who cannot speak. However, throughout history, art has continued to be created and consumed, including during epidemics and health crises. The COVID-19 pandemic that binds us today is not the only suffering human has ever faced. In the 14th century, a terrifying pandemic known as the Black Death or Atra Mortem killed 50 million Europeans. The artists reflect this humanitarian catastrophe as a terrible event that people never expect to happen. In his painting entitled The Triumph of Death, Peter Bruegel poignantly describes how Arte Mortem destroys the lives of people from different social backgrounds: peasants, soldiers, nobles, kings, and church leaders. Several centuries later, a French writer named Albert Camus published a novel entitled La Peste. In the story, Camus offers depth in looking at the reality of disaster and suffering. Camus observed that in every tragedy, a few people always seek to turn suffering into a source of profit. Camus strongly criticized such a situation. For him, in suffering, the most important thing for everyone to do is be with the victim. Do the artist's position and artwork echo what Camus said in an unfinished pandemic? It may have been echoed in the past, but the voice may not have heard loudly today. What the artists and their art resonated with was not as loud as what science does today. During a pandemic, science can indeed provide great hope. However, science cannot be a panacea, a drug that can kill the virus. Science, in the end, must catch up and compete with various modern and ancient viruses. In such a situation, is scientific explanation capable of understanding death? However, philosophical reflection still helps us interpret disasters and suffering fully. Philosophical reflection as a way to make sense of life, I believe, is also presented by comic and sequential art. Over the last 2 years, I have seen many good things that they have done in several countries, including Indonesia, my homeland. I witnessed how comic and sequential art have become companions for suffering and marginalized people. Comics and sequential art are willing to empathize and go hand in hand with those with no voice or other choice in their lives. In this case, comic and sequential art provide comfort and improvement and offer a variety of thoughts in new ways that enable them to interpret humanity more optimistically. I saw that interesting perspective in the beautifully crafted mouse by Art Spiegelman. The comic not only tells exclusively about the life journey that Vladek and Anja lived among various terrors spread by the Nazis before the Holocaust incident in the Auschwitz concentration camp happened. However, the comic also attempts to clearly show that war and hatred will never be able to build a heaven on this earth. For whatever reason, Vladek, Anja, or anyone else has the right to live in an imperfect world with feelings of peace. One of the things that could do is to uphold the truth of history. It will only create if the voices of the victims are heard and acknowledged. The experience of many people in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic has opened up opportunities for comic and sequential art to present the realism that many people live. Comic and sequential art can also make encounters between one person with others. In this case, comic art can function as a mirror of people's life. It is unavoidable that these intense encounters will build strong social bonds that lead to solidarity. In that social bond, humans can learn to pay attention to the suffering experienced by others as something that is also troubling them. In this way, the man knows not to seek profit for himself when a tragedy strikes his neighbor. Humans also learn to appreciate life as something precious in uncertain situations. Without realizing it, the pandemic teaches us that solidarity and empathy unite people from various backgrounds. This solidarity and empathy are also fundamental forms of transcendental life that are practiced by everyone who still believes in the values of humanism. In addition to solidarity, artworks developed during the pandemic also present a collective narrative about human fragility. There are so many collective narratives about loneliness, anxiety, fear of death, and the struggles of health workers on the front lines, such as there is one in the COVID Art Museum, founded by Emma Calvo, Jose Guerrero, and Irene Lorca of Barcelona. The museum houses 550 works of art, such as photographs, illustration, and digital works from around the world. In these works of art, all items related to the pandemic situation, such as masks, gloves, tissues, or disinfectants, are displayed creatively. The resulting art exhibited in museum speak of human fragility. But that fragility is not meant to be mourned. On the other hand, fragility is interpreted as the turning point to experience the hope for a better world. We can also find the narratives presented in the COVID Art Museum in the miniature cartoon comic panels created by Muhammad Mirsad, a comic artist from Indonesia. The comic panels are well stored and published in the Instagram space. These panels are an excellent example of how we can use comic art to understand solidarity in the digital age. It has been long since Mirsad presented various phases of urban humans as a community group that must be considered in his comic panels. He understands that they are always the most neglected group in urban development. Mirsad diligently paid attention to the poor exposed to COVID-19 through his comic panels when the pandemic escalated. He gave enormous support and appreciation to the paramedics who fought selflessly for the safety of the people who were exposed to COVID-19. Even after the pandemic began to disappear gradually, Mirsad continued to voice the concern felt by the poor after the government raised gasoline prices. In my opinion, the comic panels created by Mirsad in the digital space are similar to the pamphlet poems written by W.S. Rendra, one of the great poets in the history of Indonesian literature. In this panel, prophetic voices can be heard calling out loud to the rulers so that they can pay greater attention to the welfare of their people, not the interest of their pleasure. The pandemic that once tormented us may still leave nightmares. We may still remember the pandemic as a death that is present at our doorstep. The wounds it causes are hard to forget because the pandemic has pushed us into the abyss of hopelessness. However, little by little, we try to interpret all the suffering and loss as a way to value friendship, brotherhood, the universe, health, what we have, and life itself. The post-pandemic conditions we are currently treading remind us to be grateful in all adversity. However, we cannot deny that understanding all events in the aftermath framework is not easy for most people who have bad memories of the pandemic. What is the role of comic and sequential art in such a situation? Can comic and sequential art offer perspectives and other avenues that can help them through these difficult times? Can comic and sequential art exist as a medium that allows human life to become more human? Frankly, I don't know how I can answer these three questions. For now, I can only confirm that comic and sequential art has shown an excellent habitus for documenting the struggle of human life against death, suffering, loss, depression, emptiness, and heartbreak. Let me close this article with a message by Sibuta dari Gua Hantu to his beloved Sabai in classical comic Banjir Darah di Pantai Sanur by Ganesh Teha, one of the masters of Indonesian comics. In the story, Sibuta spoke this message after his five comrades died, sacrificing their lives for the sake of humankind. Accept all circumstances willingly, Sabai, because God has determined everything. Wipe your tears, because I don't want tears flowing, flooding human life. We've all suffered enough, Sabai. Love yourself, your brothers, and your friends. God will surely love you too. Goodbye, Sabai. If God permits, we will surely meet again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Maybe you would like to provide the picture of the comics that you mentioned in your article or in your presentation, because we don't see what, and we don't really understand what the pictures of the comics that you mentioned, like Miss Cartoon or anything else.
Okay, I will try. I will try to present.
Yeah. Or
But maybe
do you
after
need
Mr.
more
Levente,
time to prepare it?
Yeah. Okay. I need more time to prepare.
Okay, maybe we turn to the presentation of Mr. Levente Sipos first. Then while you prepare the picture of the comics that you present before. Okay, Mr. Paul. I think what Mr. Paul presented very interesting. That was so intense presentation because the pandemic era impact on the creation of the works of art. The artwork can be a material for contemplation together, so we can move recovery efforts in all aspects in our life. Just like Mr. Kawamukai before in the first session, he said that in Japan during the pandemic, manga really helps the Japanese people to entertain during their quarantine period. Okay. Well, next presentation is presented by Mr. Levente Sipos from Esterhazy Catholic University. Mr. Sipos is a lecturer of Media and Design Institute with the subjects such as animation design, creative animation technologies, and two-dimension or three-dimension animation technologies. He was graduated from Hungarian University of Fine Arts. Mr. Sipos' professional experience such as compositing at white plastic sky animated, feature film, and visual effects supervisor in 2020 until 2022, compositing 3D animation at Mohd animated feature film development in 2019, work at Kesenian film, so the animation series as technical workflow, compositing and visual effect in 2018, and his exhibition such as in 2020, Don Arts, Somorja Arts Camp and exhibitions. Okay, Mr. Sipos, you may start the presentations. You have 30 minutes, please.
Okay, welcome to everyone, and I'm ready to be here with you. So I will present some slides. I hope that the video details will come through the bandwidth. So I start to share the screen first. Okay. Yes, I hope that you can see my presentation. Just set up the screen. Okay. Yes. So today I will talk about one of my biggest projects, the Ruben Brandt Collector animated full feature film. It was directed by Milorad Kristic. He's a fine artist, and I took part in this production as a technical director, compositor, and 3D, 2D animators. I hope that you can see this animated full feature film in your country. Probably you can find it on Netflix or HBO Max and most of the streaming service providers. But first I would like to screen a short trailer of this film just to know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I started now. Okay, only one thing, but maybe I have to, sorry, I have to share again my screen because I have to check it that I switched off the, yeah, share sound. I have to switch on share sounds. So, once again, so this is the trailer. I hope that you can hear the sound.
My nightmares are getting stronger and stronger.
Sorry for this technical problem, but I have to go to the, I will speed up. I have to go to the settings. Speaker.
My nightmares
Probably
are
you can't
getting
hear the
stronger and
sound. Do you
stronger.
hear the sound?
Characters from famous paintings continue to attack me.
Yes, clearly. The sound is so clear.
Okay, maybe I will present my presentation without sound now. It's not so interesting, but not a problem anyway. So I'm just show this trailer first. Maybe it's without sound, but hopefully you can understand what I'm talking about. So this film is a very unique production and based on Milorad Kristic artwork. This is the trailer with special characters. And it's a crime story, basically. I will talk about that. And it's basically about art. And the art is dangerous. That's the basic meaning of the story. As you can see, there are a lot of action scene in this film, a lot of character animation with special characters. Okay, so that was the trailer. Okay, and some words about me. So, as already the beginning, I was introduced. I finished as a graphic artist, and I started to work as a graphic designer, and 3D animator, and compositor, and I also started to teach in different universities. And I started this project in 2011, and I was the first who joined to the production, to the director and the producers in this project. And in 2018, I was the last who finished this project because I was responsible to deliver the final delivery. I mean, the DCP and different copies, which you can see in the cinemas. So no, I'm just finished to work in another animated feature film, White Plastic Sky. Hopefully you can see in the cinemas soon. Some thing about this production, this Ruben Brandt collector. It's an important sentence at the beginning. There was a quote: "In my dream, I was two cats and I was playing with each other." So it's important sentence. You will see why it's later. And some words about the director, Milorad Kristic. He's a painter, and he's a typical East European artist, like born in Slovenia, learning in Serbia. Originally, he's from Serbia, but he's living and working in Budapest. So, and his first animated film, My Baby Left Me, was awarded with Silver Bean in 1995, the Berlin Film Festival. And he's got also very interesting work, that Das Anatomische Theater. It was also award-winning. Here are some artworks of him. These are paintings, but you will understand why they are so important. He is Milorad, with a kind of greetings. And this is the main concept of this animated film. It's there are 3 levels of this film. And originally it was created to create some interesting, exciting film about art, which is not boring. I mean, it's an exciting film. It's much more exciting if we're creating a kind of documentary film about art, etc., etc. So that was the main purpose, the main goal of this film. There are 3 layers of this film. The first layer is a kind of action film. Probably you can notice it from the trailer. And the second layer is there are tons of references of artworks. For example, this artwork is from Manet, Edouard Manet's painting. Probably you can recognize it, but there are hundreds of references in this movie. So maybe it's not, probably to enjoy the movie, it's not necessary, but after a time you can just recognize very familiar artworks. And the third layer is a kind of philosophical layers, how to find ourselves. We wanted to create a perfect artistic composition in every frame. And as I mentioned, it's about art. And the main synopsis that Ruben Brandt has nightmares, and he don't know why why he has got nightmares about different paintings, but later he recognized the cause of it. This is a crime story, and the only way to get rid of these nightmares to steal pictures, famous pictures from different famous museums. And that's the basic crime story. And Mike Kowalski, his alter ego, he's a detective, and he has the role to catch this Ruben Brandt paint thief. So this is their catch story. There are a lot of references in this movie, like here are some of famous directors, not just paintings, but from famous films too. And these are the 13 pictures which appear in his nightmares. These are the titles of these pictures. So probably you can recognize some of them or most of them. It's an interesting thing that, for example, all of these paintings are reinterpreted by Milorad, and only one is in its original form, the Picasso in the left top corner, because the owner of the rights of Picasso paintings not allowed to change its painting, but all the others allowed it. So we also had to care about the copyrights to use this painting. So it was really hard work to do. And so these are the stolen paintings. So this is the main story of this film. So it's about art. And in my second part of my presentation, I will show you some pictures how we created it. So I just want to, I hope that you can see my presentation. Yeah, I will just put this table a little bit down. Okay, maybe I hope it's not disturbing. So first we had to create the development, and then we start to work on the production stage. What you can see now is the production stage. We had an animatic, and we can see the layout by the animatic, and in the other process we created the music, dialogue, and sound effects. We used the animatic as a basic of everything. So this is the layout where we get the information for the different shots from the layout, like background painting to the frame-by-frame animation to the interpolated animation, 3D animation. We created this part of the given shot in shot by shot. So, and then we had to compositing that together and go to the editing stage, and we went to the color grading cast and the DCP delivery. These are the softwares what we used for this process. So I was responsible to develop this process of this film. So I tried to keep it as simple as possible. So we used the Adobe softwares like Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, etc., etc. And we used Blender for the animatic as a 3D animation tool. Later, we used Maya and Max also for the final production. So sometimes we converted some scenes from Blender to Maya. We also used Blender to render some final scenes. So there were more software on the 3D path, but on the 3D channel, but it worked well, so it was okay. We used some 2D interpolated animation for some character animation, but for the simple one, like Anime Studio, and we mostly used TV Paint for the 2D frame-by-frame animation. It's for character animation, it's a nice tool, and for background, the Photoshop software. And we all composited them together in After Effects, shot by shot, and then we edited the rendered sequences in Premiere. Okay, so for example, I will just show you a short detail from how we created the animatic and how was the final result. It's just a short part of it. So we created a quite detailed animatic, as you see, and I also created the animatic in 3D for example, for this scene. And it's mostly the film was there in the animatic. Of course, there are some differences in the timing of the final rendered production, but the main important pillars and turning points and sounds also. Unfortunately, I can't give you sounds now, but the main turning point was in the animatic already there, as you see. So I will just show you some, for example, this nice car chasing scene is quite spectacular, and the final result too. And we mixed, as you can see, and we mixed the 3D animation with the 2D animated figures, the characters. And it was an interesting part of the compositing process. Anyway, you will see it later. And after a time, anyway, there will be some full 2D animated scene here somewhere with the dance scene. Then there was some changing here. Yes. So at this point, it's changed to a 2D animated scene with 2D backgrounds. And sometimes it switched back to 3D animation scene. So we really mixed these techniques. Okay, so some aspect of the background painting, how we created the background painting. So every shot has an individual, highly detailed painted background. So that's why we needed a lot of background painter artists. They worked in our studio, and every background was created in 4K DC scope resolution. Anyway, a little bit bigger for static cameras too, just to have the possibility to recomposite it and to give some camera effect later. Of course, if we had a camera movement, then we had to calculate about the final size. Yes, and they were really big files because we needed the layers we needed when we composited them together. So sometimes this background paint PSD files for 2 or 3 gigs. And sometimes we had to put it to 16-bit, of course, because if we use the gradients, then we need that. So that's why how we created the backgrounds. As you see, we can kind of bleed or overscan around the final compositing image we asked the background painters to create there. And for example, this is another background picture, a very nice one. And this is the process how we created the backgrounds. The background painter get a slide from the animatic, and they can create this way the final background. So they always show the final compositing. And some words about the character design. It was very important to change the original characters. As you can see, this is the original drawing of Milorad Kristic about Ruben Brown, the main superhero, not super, but the main hero of this movie. But we had to change it to able to animate. As you can see, this is a turnaround of Ruben Brown. It's okay for animating. And this is the colored version of Ruben Brown. This is the final animated Ruben Brown character in the movie. And it's about the head and some posing about him. And this is Kowalski original drawing by Milorad. It's an illustration style something with one view, and we had to create turn around more view from that character. And this is the color painted version. And this is Mimi, the other hero of this movie, and the colored one. And this is a very interesting character because this character had only 2 dimensions, but moving in a 3-dimensional space. So this is just a short example about Membrano Bruno. This is some posing about him. And some words about the animation techniques what we used. We used 2D frame-by-frame animation for the main heroes. This is the most advanced but most time-consuming techniques about animation. We use TV Paint for that. And we use some 2D interpolated animation for side characters. Maybe this side character had only 1 view and more abstract. They were more abstract usually. For the main characters, we used a kind of anatomically correct design. And we used 3D interpolated animation for the cars, different background elements, etc., etc. This is an example about the traditional 2D animation process. Like this is what the animator did. This is rough animation. Not all the frames are drawing in this phase, like this one, it's a fighting scene. Yes, this is the inked version, the cleanup version. We already got the in-betweens here, but it's only outline. And this is the colored version of the same scene. So as you can see, it's quite a long process. And usually in this traditional 2D animation workflow, there are more people who are working in this process, like an animator, then a cleanup artist who will do the in-betweens too, and then later, the color painter. And of course, at the end, we had to composite it so I was a compositor also in this project and do the 3D animator. So I will show you a short video about this process too. So, and this is what I was talking about, how to integrate 2D and 3D elements to one scene. Like this is the original Maya. It was converted from Blender, the Maya 3D scene. And then this is the 2D animation Mimi in the car. And this is the outline version. And this is the colored version of Mimi in the car. And this is the final result. And then, as I mentioned, when we've got the backgrounds, the characters and the 3D elements, we had to composite them together. So this is the most exciting part of the process anyway, then you can see everything together. Of course, is the most dangerous part is because you will see what it was wrong. So at the end. So I can show you a short animation about how we did it. Like, sorry. Yes. This is the final result. And that was the animatic. And then the 2D animation and the road animation part. These are 2D layers anyway, the landscape. These are the 3D cars with different passes like shadows and color textures and colors and lighting. And the 2D character is on the truck, integrated, and some smoke effects for the exhausting pipe, and then the car. And the final composite with some refining. endless refining always. And the music was also important. Unfortunately, I can't show you music parts now, but we had a very, very good composer, Tibor Tsari. And we used also some additional music. We had also care about the copyrights and buy this music. And this is the sound design process was also very important. We will record some mass effect in the studio. This is an example of that. But the final scene, we used that in this final scene. But it's also an interesting example how to composite different masses in a dynamic way. For example, in this example, if I just go somewhere here, yes. So you can see a lot of people here, but of course we don't have to draw them individually. I used an After Effects script to put them on a curve, and I had some sliders to control the amount, the size, the color, the moving phase of these characters too. So we used 6 or 10 type of characters with 2 poses, and then I created different variants for it. And for example, these characters, that kind of one view characters, which are more abstract than the main hero, which has more views. This main hero, of course, has more views, as I showed you. And this double Elvis is by the famous painting of Andy Warhol anyway, but of course a kind of Milorad Krstić interpretation. And these are some 2D interpolated animation characters. And the mob is in the background. So, as I mentioned, the original mob shouting sounds was recorded in the studio by the members, and later our sound designer created the final sound from that. And of course, the voice cast was also important with some Hungarian actors. They also give the English version of the voice cast. And here are some numbers about the movie. As I mentioned, it was created with 4K DCI scope format, digital cinema format. We created an English and Hungarian audio channel, and also we had some titles like English, French, Hungarian. And we had a lot of shots, like 1,552 shots in 61 sequences. And the production crew was about 50% in the studio. And we had some freelancers who worked at home, and with other people who, including the audio studio too, was maximum 200 who worked on this production. And the production cost was €3.5 million. And I've got some pictures about the working days in the studio. I also invited some of my students from Eszterházy Károly Catholic University to this production. So it was really cool to get the students in this production. And we had also some very experienced old Hungarian, not old, but older Hungarian animators. So it was a really great experience to see how the young students learn and work together with the older experienced animators and the professionals. So also we've got that. We had a screening in every month, sorry. We had a team screening in every month, and every member of this production could see that, okay, where are we now in the production? So it was really important. So it was a really great community as we created this movie. And these are some voice actors, some animators, and some development stage in this. This is not the studio, it's Milorad room in the beginning of the production. Okay, and this is also a short just about the production days. So that was the life in the studio. And some still pictures, like, of course, we used Wacom and Cintiq tables. We didn't really use paper for this production, so it's digitally based production. And these are the main members of the production. There are some errors, and it's a short video, but about the members of the production. But I have to speed up now. Thanks for watching. And these are just some pictures about our next production. This is Mumush. Unfortunately, we are just stuck in this pandemic situation. So this production is not on the way, but we also created a short trailer for this production with the same team anyway. So in the same director with Milorad. And this will be the end of my presentation. And it's a similar like Ruben Brandt Collector, but it's a kind of fantasy story with time machine and this kind of things. So, but it's just a trailer, so not perfect yet, but it has some, it has also mixed techniques like 2D animation, as you can see. It's a 3D effect by Blender. It's also a 2D animated character. And then it's also 2D animated. And this is a very interesting scene with mixed 2D techniques and 3D environment together, like Mumush. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the audio problem, but I hope that you can get some impression about this production. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Sipos. Very interesting. I really love your presentation, especially the scene of Tarantino movies, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I really impressed that scenes about the dance between the two.
Yes.
Yes, that's really great.
Anyway, that was interesting that it's a kind of copyright question. We had to find all these owners if we wanted to use, anyway, it was very strange for me because first I thought that if I reanimate something, then I don't have to pay or ask copyright, but it's not true. So for example, for this scene, we just were allowed to do this, but not this. So it was quite interesting, this kind of copyright questions.
Okay, thank you.
But we solved it some way, so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sipos. And we may back to Mr. Paul. Are you ready with?
Yes, I ready.
Yeah.
And I will show some pictures and maybe I will add some explanations just for a while.
Yeah.
Let me share this. Okay. So I add the picture. Yeah, this is a picture from Peter Bruegel, The Triumph of Death, that I've already explained. And in this painting, Peter Bruegel poignantly describes how Arta Mortem, aka Black Death, the Black Death, destroyed the lives of people from different social backgrounds, from peasants, nobles, kings, and church leaders. And this is a kind of the novel from Albert Camus, La Peste. And the novel is very interesting to read maybe for we who like to read in philosophical reflection, the book is very, very nice. The main theme is in suffering, the most important thing for everyone to do is be with the victim. So this is a kind of the position of arts from humanity. And this is a picture from a collection from COVID Art Museum in Barcelona. Yeah, it's very nice and it's very creative. It's a kind of mask there. So there are so many collective narratives about loneliness, anxiety, fear of death, and struggles of health workers or the front lines, such as there is one of the COVID Art Museum founded by Emma Calvo, Jose Guerrero, and Irene Lorca of Barcelona. The collection, I think some collection were becoming a kind of examples how art has a relationship with solidarity. And this is a kind of examples from Mouse, from Art Spiegelman. This graphic novel is actually a kind of autobiography, yeah. And it reveals a lot of facts from the victim side, from the Jews especially. So this is not about Vladek and Anja, the main characters in that novel, but this is a kind of humanity a statement, yeah, in the novel graphics. And this is kind of some panels from Muhammad Mirsad, yeah. In these panels, Mirsad, for example, talks about the rare, no, not the rare, but the mask is very, it's not cheap again, yeah. Yeah, it's very difficult to find because the value is very high, yeah. But people try to buy it, yeah, even they don't have any money. These panels are an excellent example how we can use comic art to understand solidarity in the digital age. Yeah. And Mirsad diligently paid attention to the poor exposed to COVID-19 through his comic panels when the pandemic escalated. And this is about how the poor in urban community in Jakarta or in another city in Indonesia, when you know, the prices of daily, we call it daily sembako, yeah, it's very high. So this is when yeah, and this, and why I make a sameness with West Rendra, because there is a kind of prophetic voices in both of them. Yeah, Rendra, the one of the great poet in Indonesian literature, always voices, yeah, voices to the rulers. Yeah. So the voices can be heard calling out loud to the rulers, so that they can pay greater attention to the welfare of their people. Same like Mirsad, something like that. Yes, I think that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. It's enough make us understand about the picture about the comic that you presented. Okay, two keynote speakers already presented. Now we start the discussion for the questions and answer sessions. Duration is 30 minutes. Please write down your questions in chat column. Okay, everyone, please, if you have the question for our keynote speaker right now. Okay, well, wait for the question from the participant. Maybe let me ask to Mr. Sipos. Mr. Sipos, would you like to describe more about the artworks that get the great influence from the artworks from the legend like Louis Buñuel or Ingmar Bergman and that big artist? Mr. Sipos, are you there?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we talk about the artistic influence of this project, so as you can see, the base influence of art is by the Dadaism collage techniques. It's like it was Milorad, the original style. It's a kind of ironic a little bit, and artistically, there are a lot of surrealist and Dadaist element in his artworks, like a kind of collage work in his original paintings. And so that was the base influence of art when we started to work in this project. And later, as we work on this project, we realized that we can't create a too abstract production only by these Dadaist, surrealist elements, because for a full feature 94 minutes film, you know, it's probably it's too much the abstraction and the abstract space. So we had to create some layers to make it more enjoyable for everyone, not just for artistic professionals. So that's why we started to use references from different films, and also we use some different elements from art films, like famous films like Pulp Fiction and car chasing films like Balit and etc., and Convoy also. And also we started to use not just references from different films, but from, for example, the cars itself were kind of very important cars in the meaning of industrial design, like this kind of Mercedes, and there was an old Tatra, for example. It's an East European construction, etc., etc. So we try to use a wide range of artistic references, and not just fine art references, but applied art references too. Okay, so maybe that's the answer. If it's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sipos. Mr. Paul, would you answer my question? What do you think about the development of Indonesian comic in this pandemic era? Is there any comic more likely to brought the issue about the young generation in this pandemic era?
Okay, can I answer in Indonesia?
Yes, please.
Oke, baik. Pertanyaannya adalah bagaimana perkembangan ya, Bu? Ya, the development of Indonesian comic during pandemics ya. Kalau kita berbicara mengenai komik-komik yang mayor, yang besar, ya sekarang sudah selesai sebenarnya. Yang terjadi adalah bahwa sekarang kita mulai dari nol. Kita mulai dari nol, dan mulai dari nol ini artinya banyak orang-orang muda yang mulai tertarik untuk melibatkan diri, menyampaikan banyak hal. Sebenarnya Muhammad Mirsad itu hanya salah satu komikus senior yang mampu bisa bertahan. Kenapa? Because he is incorporated with Kompas Gramedia. So he can draw his comic there, and he can input the comics into his Instagram. Ya. Tapi sebenarnya ada begitu banyak, there are a lot of young generations in Instagrams or in TikToks who always draws panels about comics and sequential arts during pandemics. Dan mereka berbicara juga tentang realism. They are talking about realism. They are talking about realism. Yang menarik adalah mereka yang mulai berkarya ini, mereka tidak membatasi dirinya dengan beberapa pola-pola yang sering kali terlihat, ya misalnya panel yang mungkin bisa berubah-ubah. Sayangnya saya tidak menyiapkan beberapa contoh di sini, karena yang saya pikirkan waktu itu adalah bagaimana melihat bahwa komik ini dan sequential art ini bisa menjadi a medium for fighting against suffering. Karena saya pikir itu, dan meskipun begitu memang banyak sekali anak muda yang sebenarnya tidak dapat disebutkan namanya satu persatu, ya, karena mereka mungkin belum terkenal, tetapi setidaknya mengisi ruang-ruang yang kosong ini. Ketika sudah tidak bisa mencetak, maka digital menjadi perlawanannya. Dan saya rasa itu menjadi bagian dari perkembangan komik ke depan. Ini belum tahu, ya, karena pandemik ini baru 2 tahun. Ya. Ya, jadi belum terlihat bahwa memang gerakan yang mereka buat itu gerakan yang memang berasal from the bottom of heart, or just ya ini hanya kebetulan saja. Begitu, Bu.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paul. So that you can, that I can assume that so many young people love to express their opinion to by create comic and sequential arts. They not limit their ideas and always try to fill the comic and sequential art with the new creations and their creativity in this era.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. There is more questions for Mr. Sipos. What is the big artistic idea underlying this movie? I think it has most influence by fine arts like Picasso's Guernica.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the main artistic idea, if I speak about the third layer, you know, as I mentioned, the first layer is a kind of action movie. The second layer is the references to other artworks, and the third layer is one of them is the art is around us. It's about art. Art is around us everywhere. So this is a kind of applause of the art or these kind of things. And the other thing is how to find ourselves, because Kowalski in this movie, if you saw the movie, is the kind of alter ego of Ruben Brandt, is probably the same person. So how can I find myself? And I'm playing with myself, and who am I? So it's a kind of self searching and these kind of things. So these are the main aspects of this movie. And I also want to go back to a little to the first question, you know, with the references. So we created a website, then you can find all the references. Unfortunately, it's only in Hungarian yet, but you can, but we've got a lot of pictures. I share the pictures for a moment, if I can, and I give you a web. Okay, I put a web title into the chat.
Yeah.
And if I can share the picture, I just show you that, for example, the beginning of the movie, there is a scene like, we call it Rendezvous in London, this scene. This is from the Ruben Brandt Collector. And okay, maybe it's not, was not shared. Maybe it's shared now. Okay, can you see my picture? Can you see my picture? Okay,
yeah.
So this is the original picture from Ruben Brandt. And for example, this is a picture from an Alfred Hitchcock movie. So this was the origin of this movie. So you can find a lot of artistic adaptation of this scene. You mentioned fan art in the second question. Probably it's more than fan art, but yeah, the basic thing is something similar, the basic artistic attitude to give some respect for this big artwork. So this is the main attitude of the second layer, the reference layer of this movie. This is another example. For example, this is a clock in one of the shots of Ruben Brandt, and this is a scene from a Ingmar Bergman movie here. So unfortunately, it's in Hungarian, but if you just all the audience in this conference, probably you can understand by the pictures and the artist name, the references. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sipos. Okay, is anyone want to ask questions? Yeah, this is the questions from Jian Raga for Mr. Sipos. What is the most difficult part when you create this film?
Yes, so two difficult parts of it. One of is kind of artistic question that when we saw Milorad plan and Milorad artworks, as I mentioned, they were still pictures, very abstract works, like a collage, like Dadaist, Surrealist works, really beautiful graphic arts anyway. So we really like it. But how to create a full feature film for that? So, for example, this kind of abstract scene, okay, you can see it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then after it, maybe it will be a little bit boring or something like that. So the first task is how to develop a style which we can use for a full feature film for 94 minutes. And then that was the reason why we had to go to a little bit more realistic scenes, more realistic characters, but of course to keep the artistic attitude of them, to keep it like a graphic art, like a comic art or something like that. So that was the first difficult thing. The second most difficult thing, how to integrate this 3D, 2D, and background elements together. So the compositing was how to create the final look of this movie technically. So the second hard thing was the technical stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sipos. Is there anyone want to ask any more? No one. Okay, I think no. Our discussion is enough. Okay, before we finish this session, let me resume our discussion with our keynote speakers today. Comic and sequential arts can be medium to convey opinions and issues that are developing in society, such as the Keluarga Miring comics that's represented by Mr. Seno today, that Indonesia situation in the 1960 have a big issue that still relevant to our discuss in nowadays, and the development of the manga industry, which was also influenced by global conditions such as the pandemic COVID-19, and also comics that talk about pandemic conditions were also very popular in society. People liked them so much because comics reflected what people felt at the same time. That's all the resume for the today. Well, this session has finished. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Thank you, Mr. Sipos. This is a very interesting discussions. And thank you for all participants for your cooperation for this virtual event, so it runs without any problems. That's all from me. Good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum. Om Santi, Shanti, Shanti, Om. Ms. Manda, you may take in charge.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Debbie. Okay, thank you very much to all keynote speaker, Mr. Paul and Mr. Levente Sipos. Very useful knowledge and that rich and our knowledge about development of comics and sequential arts in post-pandemic area that influence our life and increase optimism to move forward even though we have to live in new normal condition. The next agenda is best presentation announcement from Coordinator 2022 International Comics and Sequential Art Conference, Mr. Gogor. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Finally, we are now in the part of this conference, and I would like to express my gratitude to all keynote speakers. Very nice presentation and broaden our knowledge, and also to all participants for joining and succeeding to this conference. And now I would like to announce the best paper for the parallel session. It's not easy to decide which one, but we should choose. And the best paper goes to Gideon Frederick. His paper entitled Online Comic Creators, Pedagogy in Indonesia. Congratulations to Gideon. Are you still here? No? Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Gogor. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, Gideon, you are still here. Thank you. Yeah, congratulations to your paper. And finally, once more, I would like to thank you to all participants, and I hope we can meet again in the next festival, in the next conference, in the next year. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Gogor. Congratulations for best presentation, Gideon K. Frederick from Universitas Multimedia Nusantara. And the last agenda is closing. This memorable event is need to always remember. Then we may take photo session. Ladies and gentlemen, please be ready and take position and turn on the camera. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Once more. Okay, thank you. Well, this session is the end of the seminar. Our agenda is running well. Thanks 1,000 times for our guests, moderator, and all participants who have been a good participant in this event. Hopefully, this seminar will be held in the next year. Thank you for being resilient. Thank you for your nice attention. The last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi Santi Om.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Sipos.
you.
Thank you.
Sipos.
Thank you.
See you next
Semuanya.
year, next conference. Thank you very much. Terima kasih semuanya.
Terima kasih Pak Gogor, Bu Debi. Terima kasih Komsek.
Terima
Sampai ketemu
kasih.
lagi.
Terima kasih,
Sampai
terima kasih
ketemu.
Terima
semuanya.
kasih semuanya.
Terima kasih. Kenapa? Oh gitu ya.